Welcome back to the Adrenal Fatigue podcast. It's your hosts, Angela and Danielle here. And on today's episode, we're talking all about the challenges that many of us face as we step into our 40s as adults and as parents. To have this great conversation, we are very excited to have our special guest, Dr. Anthony Balduzzi, doctor and father, to discuss what we need to prioritize in our 40s and strategies to maintain a fit body and mind. Dr. Anthony Balduzzi, the founder and CEO of the Fit Father Project and the Fit Mother Project, experienced a pivotal moment in his childhood when he watched his own father work relentlessly, only to succumb to illness and pass away at the age of 42. Anthony was just 9 years old at the time. This life-changing event inspired him to dedicate his life to helping busy fathers and mothers, age 40 and above, lose weight, build muscle, and improve their overall health for the well-being of their families. As a licensed naturopathic doctor in Arizona, Dr. Balduzzi also holds dual degrees in nutrition and psychology from the University of Pennsylvania. In addition to his academic achievements, he is a former national champion bodybuilder. Through his unwavering commitment and efforts, Dr. Balduzzi has successfully helped over 60,000 families across more than 100 countries through his Fit Father, Fit Mother programs. So cool. Dr. Anthony, we are so honored and pleased to have you here to chat with our listeners today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Danielle. Happy to be here.
So we shared a little bit about what inspired the Fit Father Project in the intro, but can you just tell us a little bit more about where you got your start and how things have evolved for you over the years?
For sure. I think I got into health almost like by accident. Like I didn't grow up saying, I want to be a doctor. I want to treat patients. Like I grew up watching my own father become very ill. And I think largely because he was doing everything that parents are told they should do, is push incredibly hard for their families. And he flatlined himself. And in the process, his immune system got crushed. He ended up getting a cancer diagnosis. And he battled that for years. Pretty much my whole childhood, he battled brain cancer. I saw him go through 2 brain surgeries, and he eventually died when he was 42. And so I was 9 at the time, and it totally rocked my world to see, just like your parents, you look up to them so much as young kids, and to see what it looks like for someone to totally crash, burn, and then die, it shook me to my core. But in that inspiration, and I guess the pain eventually turned into inspiration to figure out, okay, so how do we take care of our bodies? And me as a young man, how do I step up and help provide for my little brother, my mom, or at least just like, how do I not be so sad? How do I get out through my own healing and the trauma that came from that? So I turned inward and I got very serious about health at a young age, which as a young boy, especially when the hormones started to kick in, that looked a lot like weightlifting and then learning how to prep foods. I wanted to become more muscular and then started to perform better in school and then in sports as I'm functioning better. And then when I got to medical school, I found people just like my dad and like my mom. But the story of my mom is super relevant too, because she's raising 2 young kids, single mom, getting up in the morning to try to learn how to trade stocks to put food on the table. So I saw what it's like to have lots of external pressures. And then I saw that despite the fact that we all know many things we should do, it's just like life is complicated. There's this big stressful environment. And I needed to help parents, particularly busy parents, find the through line with the things we know we need. We need a good, nutritious, healthy diet. We need a movement practice. We need a good sleep and circadian rhythm, maybe some supportive supplements. But it's tough when the rubber meets the road to make a sustainable plan. So that's what I got dedicated to doing. And it started with the Fit Father Project. And it was amazing when we started putting these elements in place that people were really succeeding. And a lot of it's not just like health and fitness information. It's a lot of behavioral psychology. It's a lot of like mental, emotional processing. But it's not just information. It's this internal hero's journey we go through as we're trying to heal and get healthy. And then from that, the Fit Mother Project came along a few years later. So now we have these 2 thriving communities helping busy moms and busy dads, particularly over 40, even though I'm not quite there myself. I'm in my 30s, but I'm looking at longevity and I'm helping people who feel like they have less wiggle room because the hormones are changing. Metabolism's not the same. They're as busy as ever. So I'm sure people listening to this are nodding their heads to a certain extent, like this is life. And we need to find a way to navigate it. And if we don't, we end up being the statistics, like half of people being overweight or obese, metabolic syndrome, flatline from stress and adrenal fatigue. That is exactly what happens due to the pressures of today's world if we're not able to create a very conscious strategy to manage those things. And that's what I'm here to help, much like you both are here to help make that picture a little bit better for a few people.
I love that. Love your mission. And yeah, it's near and dear to our hearts because this is just our the realm that we work in, people struggling with this day to day. And you said something that's been coming up in so many of our client meetings lately that I want to come back to. It's when it comes to managing stress, it really does have to be sustainable. Clients come to our calls all the time and say this almost like they're saying the same thing week after week of things are really busy. This life is so full. It was hard to do this. And this is where that whole mental accountability, emotional support really ties in to create something sustainable. Because if we let life just take its course, like there's always going to be things and fullness and ups and downs that we have to navigate. But really, it's having just a solid, sustainable plan that we can fall back
Hmm.
on that we know is going to support us through it all.
For sure. I completely agree with you. And I would say this, it's a two-factor thing. It's one, having a plan, which is like the gear that we can turn to the best of our ability every day that gives us some traction and makes sure that we're moving forward in the general direction. And I think largely the cool thing about nutrition is nutrition provides this structure for us to feel like we have a plan. Because ultimately, whether or not we are busy, not busy on eating healthy, not eating healthy, most people are going to eat. So at the very least, if we can install a good nutrition structure and the right kinds of healthy foods, this gives us a sense of we're doing well. Okay. But I say that to say that there's part of it that is strategic planning, but then the other aspect that we can certainly get into if you want to is how we're relating to all of the things in our lives. Because there are people who are incredibly busy, maybe even busier than any of us combined, that are also perfectly at peace. They're in this like great flow, and it's because they've done a lot of inner work and they're able to be active without attached. And so there's this dance we're going through, and this is our personal growth and development of both habits and actions, as well as relationships to the things in our lives. And I think there is this subtle experience, especially when we are in a healing journey where we think that the things outside of us are stressors are bad, and we're trying to like keep out things, guard them, remove them, and eliminate them. And that certain times can be the truth. Like you do need to eliminate certain toxic things, influences from your life, but also there's a way to relate to things in a different way. And I guess that's more of like the inner health spiritual path. But as we know, that is equally important because these thoughts and emotions and our feeling of congruency is interfacing with us epigenetically. So it's literally changing the same stuff that certain nutrients are changing just from a mental emotional pathway.
Yeah, there's so much here. Where do I go? I love what you talked about. You mentioned this, it's like a different perspective, right? Like how we look at life, how we react to life. And I think it's really easy to be busy and especially as a parent and feel busy all the time. And that's actually why I've taken the word busy out of my vocabulary. And I use the word full. And just by using that word, oh, my day is full. But because I just say that because it's such a little shift that can almost create some ease in my world. So anyway, but you said acted without attachment. And I just wanted to come back to that because is that what you said?
I did. Yeah.
Active without attachment. I love it. And I like to add that as it's like active without the attachment or even the judgment that you're doing
Mhm.
something wrong or that I feel like that those are like limitations and can really keep us out of this place of, like you said, where the people are have very busy lives, but have very, I would say, rituals or routines that help them stay balanced
Yes.
amongst all the fullness.
Yes. Said it's, I think that's where the morning and the evening are particularly powerful times because they're bookends to a day. They're a chance to either set a tone for what is to come or to release anything that got built up. It's almost like static charge that gets built up throughout like just activity when things are rubbing. That's our lives, that's activity. And it gets discharged when we ground, when we reconnect. So I'm speaking on a metaphoric aspect as well as maybe even a literal one here. But the point is, I guess the morning and evening rituals, which could start out with really good nutritious breakfast with a lot of good micronutrients that support the adrenals and regulate blood sugar and fats and proteins and all these good things. That is a way of not just doing a physically good thing for your body, but also a mental, emotional kind of reset and forecast for the day to come. And I'll share this, and this is definitely my own personal life experience. I've had a couple very intense, which some people could say like traumatic experiences in my life. My dad dying for sure. And then when I was in my last year of medical school, I was in like a near fatal skiing accident. I was skiing like a total idiot and I slammed into a tree, shattered my leg, broke my arm, and like almost died. And I had 6 years of surgeries to heal my body from that. And what I learned from both of these experiences is to cultivate the idea that in the seed of every challenge is like the beautiful flower that can come forward, which is like the it is the lesson, it is the greater understanding. So if we can start to cultivate this experience in ourselves, and it's not just words, it's a really feeling that life is working for us, even if we can't see it right now, like there's something good that comes from us going through this stuff that feels uncomfortable at the moment. And if we can accept that, then we're like in the Tao, the flow of how what is. We're no longer resisting as much, because I think stress comes from when we put a time constraint on something or a outcome constraint on something. It must be like this. That's a mental projection that we put on something. And then when it doesn't fit that, we feel this anxiety. It's the gap between what we're saying it has to be. Whereas there's this practice of accepting, okay, my kids are going crazy. They're doing things that I would not like. Traffic is not how I'd like it to be today. My boss is not being as nice as I would like to be. And I guess the more you observe those thought patterns that come up, you can start to release them. And I think that's the cool thing about our minds is we think of our minds as ourselves, but our minds are a combination of like mental patterns and thought patterns that we can learn to release and heal. And it's a journey. It's not like overnight snap your fingers. Everyone will be happy running around and like super connected and productive. But what more is there for us to do other than learn how to navigate our internal environment and create more beautiful stuff in the external environment? And the final thing I'll say is I think when people are feeling stressed and busy, it's largely because they're focusing on them from a slightly egoic perspective. It's I am trying to orient this world to fit my parameters of what I want. And what I've found in my life, the antidote for that is to get into a place in my heart of like more service. And what that means is I am here. I'm going through in a beautiful experience. I'm learning. There's ups, there's downs, there's range to my life. And I want to do good with my time and my energy. And it seems that just that subtle shift to orienting yourself in this direction of service, what does this do? Biochemically, this is changing your nervous system into a more parasympathetic, receptive, connected experience. You get more serotonin released in your brain. You're no longer having the release of the cortisol stress hormones. We get more oxytocin when we feel connected and bonded. And we can talk about how that all works, but our chemistry changes when we orient into service. So I guess that's very relevant, I think, to share for our audience here that's interested in adrenals, as well as managing stress. So we're managing our orientation in the world.
I love that. And we talk so much about that inside our program as well. And we very much have a mental, emotional, and spiritual component to our program. And really is exactly what you're talking about here. And you saying it so well. I appreciate you sharing this piece. And I love it how it's really why we bring the whole HPA access into this and not really adrenal fatigue is an easy, catchy phrase, but reminding us that it all is so connected to the brain and how we're thinking and how we are reacting to life around us.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important what you're sharing here. And I think it can be hard because people think that's a harder road, right? Like changing the way I think is going to be hard and changing my beliefs. And then again, it's not the easiest thing to do, but it can change everything. That's the thing is we can start to see that we know there's a direct connection. And so when we can start to work on all the things, and not to say we can't be working on it all at once, but we need to be addressing, it's helpful when we address this from a holistic standpoint. And
I'd like to share one more thing on this, because I think what you said is so powerful, like the HPA axis that we're talking about. Let's start with the H, the hypothalamus, right? This is an area of the brain, as you both intimately know, and probably listeners, that is receiving. It's a relay station for inputs. And then it's communicating out what needs to happen in this neuroendocrine system. But like it's input driven, like what is coming in, what are we receiving? And then what do we do about that? And now the cool thing is like when we're working on ourselves, it can feel in some sense like a conscious effort. Like we do need to do certain practices. We do need to make certain foods. We do need to schedule in certain ways. That's the external practical aspect of this. But the cool thing is just getting ourselves in front of more positive, healthy inputs does a lot of this changing for ourselves. So it's like the plant is not stressing out about how it grows. If the plant is in good soil and it gets proper sunshine and water, it will grow. These are good inputs. So my thing is, okay, how do we get ourselves more good inputs and do that regularly? I'll say from a neurologic perspective, if you have the ability, seasonality depending, to get water, healthy nutrients, and sunshine into your body early in the day without you needing to do some crazy practice or anything like that, those inputs are automatically changing your entire response. Like people feel good when they're outside in morning sunshine. And we can talk about the physics of that and how it affects the serotonin system as well. But it just is. So I guess outside of feeling we need to do more stuff, if we can just get ourselves around more healthy inputs, a lot of the healing can happen in a way that doesn't require as much conscious effort. There's many ways to approach it.
I love that. The solution can be so simple and that we can overcomplicate that. often.
Mhm.
So I love that.
Yeah. A thought that was coming up for me was control when we're talking almost about the expectations. And we definitely have noticed that there is an influx of type A's that tend to come into our program where we're trying to
Mhm.
control so many different areas of our life. And so, a question that I was thinking of asking you, and you touched on it already, was obviously some days are easier than others, especially depending where you're starting from in regards to how you're feeling when
Mhm.
it comes to like really feeling into that morning ritual and getting aligned and that energetic alignment that kind of helps you
Mhm.
feel better throughout the rest of the day. So I was going to ask, and you mentioned the nutrition and the morning sunshine and the water, but if you have any kind of go-tos for the people struggling and having a really difficult time in the morning, our audience notoriously like the burnout, like the poor sleeps and then the low cortisol sometimes in the morning makes for it to be a more difficult time of the day.
Yeah.
So we'll take whatever hacks you can give us.
For sure. I'll speak into it. And I wish there was like one given answer. And what you did say is very true that what happened the day before, like the momentum and the energy is constantly carrying forward into the fresh new day. So I guess the meta perspective is we have the energy that we're moving forward. If we want to describe the quality of what we'd like it to be is like happy, productive, clear, connected, energized versus maybe like the stressed, fatigued, overwhelmed, or just flatlined, exhausted. These are two kind of specs of this energy ball. And every day we're assessing like where we're at and what we need to do to move things forward. So I guess it all starts with self-awareness. And then it all starts with being very realistic about the capacity we do have in our schedules and like what we can do during that time. I think if you're here's what I'd say. In a perfect scenario, I think what is good for our bodies to have in the morning is some amount of light movement. For me, this looks like a little walk outside. And again, I'm going to say not everyone has the luxury of this. So I'll give you the breakdown version of what we could do if we have very little time or very little energy. But if you have the ability to get the combination of hydration, walking, or some kind of movement, which gets the circulatory system going, the sunshine in the morning is proven to interface with the cortisol rhythms of the body. It smooths out cortisol spike. It helps really create more serotonin, which can convert to melatonin later at night, which again will help you sleep and restore better, which helps you feel better the next day. So like what you do every morning is affecting every night. So I do recommend getting outside if possible. And then I would say it's like the phone itself is probably one of our biggest external triggers for getting us into a reactive aspect of mind. And many of us, well, certainly all of us growing up here, when we were kids, we did not have cell phones. And so, but this is a modern thing. It's not like how humans are designed to be. We just have these now. So I would say, practically speaking, if you're very busy and you don't have time, you only have time to make a smoothie, get the kids ready, run out the door. You don't have time to take a walk in like sunshine, anything crazy like that. At the very least, get that reactive aspect of the cell phone out of the way, make yourself that good, healthy smoothie. And then on the way to school, driving the kids to school or going to work, or if you work from home, whatever, listen to something that's like positive for 5-10 minutes. It could be this podcast, anything where you feel like you're investing in yourself, maybe something that feels like it's different than where your locus of stress is, which is typically in our work and our families. So maybe it's of your personal interest, something that's fun and joyful. But just that little hook every single day will set you on the right habit and the right front. And then, hey, I guarantee no matter how busy you are, you have some time during the day, even if it's a break between meetings or you need to go to the bathroom, where you can then get that walk in and get moving. So I think the mental stress is we know there's many things we want to do and we can't always fit them in at a specific time, say the morning or the evening, but we can check that box throughout the day. Because realistically, like 12 hours is a good amount of time. Even if we're very busy, we do have the ability to get a 10-minute walk in, to do 5 minutes of stretching, to get a little bit of sunshine, to have a healthy smoothie. So giving us the grace that maybe like things don't have to happen at a very given time, but they can happen later in the day. Now, my personal reflection on my life, I do work from home. I've been on this health and healing journey for many years, and I've created this space in my life that my morning routine looks like waking up and rehydrating with mineralized water, which for me, this means like adding trace minerals to it, pinches of salt. I like humic and fulvic acids. I drink like 20 to 32 ounces, and I don't eat first thing in the morning. I wait, although I auto-regulate a little bit. Sometimes food comes earlier, sometimes it comes later. I do get outside and walk my dog and my daughter. It's fun, connected time. I feel like I'm stacking it all together. She's learning. I'm getting sunshine. She's getting sunshine. Our dog is very happy. And then before I do have food, I will sit for a little bit of a prayer meditation practice. And I think for me, it's a hook to be able to do that when I have an empty stomach. I find it's an easier practice to go a little bit deeper. And that's a time where I'm like be able to aware of any thought patterns that are coming up, sink deeper into feeling my body, just being present. And I guess that little bit of experience early in the day carries on and has a rippling effect. And some days are easier than others. It's not about how well it went, just the fact that it gets in. So I guess, is there a hack in there? No. I think it's about being self-aware maybe and being realistic about what you can do, and also understanding if it doesn't happen in the morning, it can happen later in the day. And then if someone's really struggling, like with their adrenal fatigue, I'm sure you guys have talked about this on many of these podcasts. There is nutrients and certain like support that you can do. If you're flatlined, you might be taking glandulars, you might be taking different key nutrients. Like there's stuff that you can do to give yourself a little bit of a prop up in the really tough times to get through. And then the final thing I'll say is they say tough times don't last, tough people do. I don't know if tough is what we really want to go for when we're thinking of ourselves, but I do want to emphasize the aspect of seasonality. The stresses we have are never at 9 out of 10 for the whole period of time. I can speak for us new parents on the call. The first year was very hard. It's getting a little bit easier. I have a slightly over 1-year-old daughter now. So I guess it's just to remember that things are seasonal. They do shift and change. This is not going to be forever, even though it feels like it may be.
Love that. I like the word resilience there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So a takeaway I'm taking from this is sometimes I think that we bring too much rigidity to like what it has to be, and just embrace a little bit more flow. Have the vision of what you'd like it to be. One of the tips I often share is like almost make a couple versions of your morning routine. One for the day is when you're feeling like a 1 to 4 when it comes to energy. And then that other version where you're feeling more energetic and you have the capacity for a bit more, but having less structure, but more flow and a little bit more flexibility can feel really nice.
That's a beautiful tip. So maybe the ideal morning routine for someone has a workout in it, has a healthy breakfast, has a walk, has sunshine, has prayer meditation. Like that's the expanded version. But then I'm thinking as a reflect, because I do this intuitively, what my pared down non-negotiables are is certainly the water. And it's certainly getting outside and getting sunshine for even 3-4 minutes just to get that sun input. And then the workout doesn't always happen. That can be peeled off. That's okay. And I think that's something for people to understand too on the exercise front. It's something that people have so much anxiety and stress about because we feel like we should be doing it more, but it's probably the least important part of this overall health picture, especially if you're adrenally taxed. You do not need to do more high intensity exercise on top of that, although it can be beneficial. And then the final thing to the metaphor, like I think the things that survive in nature, you're so right, have a certain amount of like flexibility and structure. It's like rubber is a lot stronger than a brittle piece of something. Like rubbers can be dense, it can flow and it can move, but it still has some substance to it. So like maybe we should be like rubber.
I like that. It's especially as a parent, you have to get used to the chaos. And I think it's like, how can you actually be in your internal world, be mostly at peace so that when there's chaos around you, you're actually able to be pretty okay with it most of the time and pretty resilient to it. And yeah, you can be in the flow and just say, okay, this is chaotic and I'm feeling a little anxious and that's okay. And how can we shift this possibly?
Yeah, totally agree. And I think what I had to realize with my daughter is that I felt like it was like my deep soul responsibility to shape her. And that is such a lie. She has her own life. She is getting all these different inputs. I am a strong, powerful, positive input, but you just have to let go and understand that our children are being like propelled forward by this unfolding force of life that is like beyond us. We are an aspect of it, but we are not everything. And even just releasing that is they will be okay. And even in the stuff that seems like it's not okay, is this not the exact challenge opportunity that they get to grow and overcome? And we want to take away so much of these moments for them to become resilient. But like the truth is, it's going to happen either way. It's just how we're relating to it.
Yeah. And they're going to teach us more than I often find they teach us way more than we teach them because they are a direct, often it can be a mirror of us too. So it's a good self-awareness tool as well. They're wonderful for that. I wanted to speak a little bit to the morning routine. And just one more thing I want to add to that is I think it's really important, like the pared down version and it's like taking all of those little things that you mentioned, right? The hydration, maybe not the hydration, that feels like a kind of a...
You can do that. Yeah.
That's an important one. That's pretty easy. But like the moving your body, a walk is wonderful, right? You're getting the fresh air, you're getting the sunshine, maybe you're bonding with your pet or your loved ones at the same time, which I love that kind of optimizing your time, energy, beautiful. And just like tapping your body, right? Waking your body up, getting like the circulation going in, getting the lymph. So if you're exhausted in the morning, you wake up and feel like you've been hit by a train every morning. We get that. We know what it feels like. And it's pare down. If you're extremely exhausted and burnt out, like what we're sharing here, just take it down and pare it down about 10 notches and what feels right for you to like, how do you want to move your body? And I love that it can change all the time. You are waking up and what can I handle? What do I want to create today? What am I capable of today?
Even a couple of deep nose breaths and just bouncing on the balls of your feet is enough to get some lymph moving, to get the more oxygen getting pumping through. And we can all do that. We could do that immediately from getting up. It's just a matter of also seeing why this is important too, because when we're feeling like really crummy on any given day, it's important to remember, why are these practices so connected? And so that's like the knowledge aspect. It helps motivate us.
That's funny. I was just on a call with a client the other day, and we were actually working on structuring her a morning routine that really resonated with her. And it was funny because she said, what about those mornings I'm just exhausted? And it's like a little bit of hard love. That's exactly why you're doing this. Because I don't wake up every morning and I'm like bounding out of bed and like excited for every single day and I feel amazing. Sometimes I do wake up and I don't feel that cortisol kick in and it doesn't feel awesome, right? I'm a little groggy. I still have kids sleeping in my bed with me. Like it's a reality. And those are the days when my morning routine is most important because I'm like, I don't want to feel this way. So I'm going to do whatever I can to get myself out of this feeling because I want to feel better. So I just want to say that. And it doesn't have to be the top notch situation, but figure out something that's going to work for you to get you to a different place and a better feeling space.
For sure. Good.
And I think that can relate to us. I'm still surprised sometimes because we were talking about the water kind of being like one of those essentials that you do every morning. But a lot of people, with no judgment, they're not there yet. So sometimes when we haven't incorporated a certain habit, we don't know how good it feels on the other side. Like I was literally talking with a client about this last night. It's like one of those things when I don't do it, I notice it. I feel like it just feels so good. Same with morning movement can look like so many different things. You mentioned like the bouncing on your toes a bit. But even just like a little bit of mobility and just getting out those like morning aches. If you're not used to doing that, you don't know like how amazing it like of a start you can have just by incorporating a couple simple things that then become non-negotiables in some capacity. I think water, movement in some capacity, morning sun, if we're in an area where we can get it.
I know in Toronto, you not always have that opportunity.
Yeah, we need the lights. Yeah, it was dark in the winter for a long time, but we're doing the best we can with the morning sun. And I think those three. Is there anything that you'd add to that list?
I would add something, but not through a slightly different perspective. It's so funny because what's the one thing that people like don't need to, that are being pulled towards is like coffee or stimulants. And I'm not knocking it, but that's the one thing that we're just like being drawn towards. So if you can just still have that, but make sure that you do a few things before that, then it's good because you obviously this natural dopamine drive to get that coffee because it feels good. It's a ritual. It's energizing. So if you can just make sure that before I do this, I shake my body out and I drink a little water, that's going to help you like stack that. And so that's actually like what helped me learn how to take the time to meditate and pray too, is because, I know it's better when I don't have food in my belly. And sometimes I want to eat. So I will get it in before I have this thing. So I guess you're now stacking on things that you naturally have a drive to do in the morning. So sliding a few things in before can help with the consistency.
Love that.
Good point. So I'd like to chat a little bit more about this sort of 40 age bracket, being in the 40s myself. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about optimizing our health and as we approach 40 and in our 40s as men and women and how that might differ from different stages of life.
Yeah, I just think like the simplest way to put it without getting too deep into like biochemistry is the margin for error seems to go down. You can't get away with as much as you could. And it becomes ever more important to prioritize good metabolic health, which means blood sugar regulation and insulin sensitivity. And because if you don't, like there's underlying cascade of damage that will start to show up in your late 40s and your 50s that then becomes like prescription medications. Now your loss of function is really big. So I would say a couple things. On the exercise front, like it's good to get high intensity exercise, even just like once or twice a week. I feel like that's the thing you sprinkle in. The reason that's so good is it activates our mitochondria, these energy powerhouses, in a powerful way and gets us to produce more energy. Like you don't have to have a young kid produce energy. Like they're rich in all of this. They're energy factories. But for us, we need to actually understand that we need to do a couple things of stressing the body in the right way. That's like use stress. It's a challenging high intensity workout 1 to 2 times per week is good. And then prioritizing everything about mobility and stretching and joint function. It becomes ever more important too. So this could look like a stretching practice, a yoga practice, a walking movement practice, but something that is getting us to move our body in all the spatial arrangements that we need to do, because the quality of your life in your 60s is going to be largely determined by your spine. How healthy is your spine? How healthy are the nerves that exit your spine? And how healthy is your circulatory system and the level of sugar and the hormones effects in there? So I guess it inherently can become more longevity focused as opposed to aesthetically focused. I think it is a good time for people in their 40s, when it's right and appropriate, and this is on someone's healing journey, to start incorporating fasting and things like this that can extend lifespan. And this is the intentional practice of doing some catabolic metabolism. Whereas when we're younger, we're always eating and driving anabolism, driving insulin. And when we get older, we can learn to fast and learn to allow things to break down, because the immune system does over time become a little senescent. Like it just is not as robust as it was when we were younger. Now, there's a lot of things we can do to make that not necessarily the case. One of the best things we can do is allow the body time and space to not digest and to clear things out through process of autophagy and fasting. So I think that's relevant. I think supplements, especially for women, can become very relevant around the perimenopause period and then the menopause and the postmenopause, and as well as nutrition and understanding that we're not just eating for calories anymore. That's the perspective that I feel is very relevant to people in their 20s and 30s. And in the 40s, you're like understanding, okay, this food has certain minerals or vitamins or micronutrients or phytochemicals that are specifically beneficial for me in these ways, and then nailing those. So I guess to navigate the 40s and the 50s, and when it comes to your health, means you have to learn. Like you must learn at least something about why these things work in our bodies so that you can incorporate it in. And then again, how it actually comes where the rubber meets the road, it doesn't have to be that complicated. You could be making that power smoothie in the morning that has the maca, chia seed, hemp seeds, organic berries, protein powder, and like you're getting all the things that you would want and need. And I am a big believer, especially as people get into their 40s, 50s and beyond, of standardizing the first couple meals of the day for decision fatigue, for prioritizing a lot of micronutrition early in the day. And then I guess like sleep and circadian rhythm patterns become ever more important as well, because the nervous system is not quite as resilient as it was. We can probably all recognize, I don't know if you guys drank, but I had a time where I drank in college and I could drink and get up the next day and I was like functional. If I did that now, I would probably die. And I think the point of sharing that is that's just a good explainer of how our different detox, metabolic pathways and nervous system and circadian rhythm becomes more sensitive as we get older. So we need to be a little more gentle with our bodies in the process.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot of these things that you're just speaking about we weren't conscious of a lot of these different things. It can really come and bite you in the butt. Like it can really build up on itself. And then you start to hit, like for many women too, it's that perimenopause, not even being aware of perimenopause being a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going into perimenopause already really unbalanced. And maybe you're having aging parents and you have children. And it's not surprising that those stacked on top of each other just create this perfect storm where people are just like, all of a sudden, everything is going wrong. I can't eat anything. I can barely eat anything. I have no energy. It's unfortunate. But that's where, again, as we talked about earlier and you shared your personal story, it's like the body will tell us. And usually it whispers for a while and then it will just screaming when it's been whispering so long and you're not listening. And so I think it's just that buildup where people are like, why is all this happening to me right now? And a lot of times when people come to us, they are in that range of perimenopause when things really are, their just bodies are less resilient.
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful thing to work with coaches like yourself too. A couple specifics on that, on the food, is in the 40s to discover your food sensitivities if you don't already know those, because the margin for error becomes smaller and you could be eating things that are inflammatory for you uniquely. And the process of figuring that out is both challenging and freeing on the other side of things. And the other thing I'll say is many people, as we get older, want to maintain a certain kind of aesthetic. We'd like our skin to look nicer. There's this whole anti-aging regimen. And the best anti-aging regimen is not a cream that you can put on your skin, although many of those are very helpful. It's like the skin is a reflection of what's happening on the inside of the body. This holistic, nourishing approach the reason it's so beneficial too is because we end up looking more beautiful on the outside. Our version of healthy, vibrant skin, clear eyes, good poop, strong nails. This is a sign of like vitality, and it starts from the inside, our inputs.
Nice to have that connection, and gives you a little bit of a motivating push when it
Right?
comes to incorporating these things.
Sure.
So in your practice as a naturopath and working in the realm of with parents, busy, stressed out parents, we're very familiar with symptoms around here, but what are the main symptoms that you're seeing in this realm of people day to
For
day in your
sure.
work?
I think it's the main systems that are being affected by our toxic or unhealthy inputs. GI complaints, probably number one. Bloating, changes to poop and stools, alternating constipation, diarrhea, just feeling like after I eat, I do not feel well, or I feel like I'm retaining a lot of water and fluids, and just generally, man, I think everyone knows when our GI tract feels healthy, we can eat food, we don't feel as bloated. That's an experience. It may have been a long time ago, but that's a huge area where it shows up. And then the circadian rhythm aspects of feeling like some people say, I have a mind that never feels like it can shut off. I have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, or I just feel like I'm constantly always racing. So that's like the nervous system. And whether we're in a sympathetic overdrive, and helping people shift back into a parasympathetic, which I know is a huge part, like healing happens in the parasympathetic. I've heard you both say basically that on this podcast before. So that's a huge area where these things show up. And then as we get older too, joint pains and issues, which can be from old injuries, but they can also be through underlying inflammatory processes. And if you're having underlying inflammatory processes, it's the same stuff that's going to lead to heart disease. It's the same stuff that increases risk for cancer. It's the same stuff that can affect fertility and hormones. And I guess just generally, maybe energy is the one thing that everyone comes to health practitioners like yourself or naturopaths for. I want to feel more zest of life. And again, it's this holistic approach of the nutrition, the movement, the sleep, the mindset. It's everything together. And I respect everyone on this journey who's listening to this. If you're listening to this, you're on the journey of healing. And so it's bravo to you for even being here. It's beautiful. And I think the things that we want to improve in life, we must continue to pour more energy into and have more trust and faith. And so even the fact that you're showing up listening to this is powerful. And I say continue to, because even though it doesn't necessarily click on day one, it'll start to make sense. Your brain is making new mental models of how this all fits together. You're making new connections about why this stuff's important. You show up this week and you do something a little bit better or a little bit differently. And also maybe connect this to your deep core values. If you're listening to this as a parent like I am, understand that this stuff that we're doing is not just for us. It's setting models and examples for our kids, as well as helping them create some of these habits early on in life so they don't have to accrue much of the damage and unwinding that so many of us do. So how integrated is this life experience? I'm just blown away talking about it. It's complicated, but I guess in some sense, there's a simplicity to how connected everything is.
Absolutely. Love that. You have given us so much wisdom and thus to think about and in this podcast. I wanted to just, if you have anything else that you want to share with our listeners and where they can learn more about you and what you do with your clients and patients.
Yeah, we have two companies, Fit Mother Project and Fit Father Project. The websites are fitmotherproject.com and Fit Father Project. And on there, we have the ability for people to join a mailing list if they'd like to. We have a free meal plan and a very time efficient workout, like a 24-minute workout that people can get in if they want to see the kind of flavor of higher intensity exercise we do. And another cool place is our YouTube channels. We have great YouTube channels for Fit Mother Project and Fit Father Project. We have close to 500 to 1,000 videos across the two channels on nutrition, workouts, mindset, all this kind of great stuff. And so again, to both of you, I'm grateful that you had me on, and you've been wonderful and gracious hosts. And to this community, I hope this was helpful.
So helpful. Thank you so much for being with us. And thank you for so much of what you would do in the world and supporting moms and dads. I think is not a better time than now to be supporting men and women, mothers and fathers who are trying to do it all in this world.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Thanks to you both.